I want to start with you, Tara. Was there always the plan to do a documentary about Biz's life? Or if not, at what point did you decide this is something I want to move forward with?
As soon as I knew Sacha was attached to the film, I was like, oh, yes, we're going to go forward with this.
And Sacha, what about the project made you want to become involved or pick Biz as a subject?
Well, some of my earliest memories are attached to Biz Markie and the music that he made. And it reminds me of the hip hop that I came up on, the hip hop that I love. And his story is so important and so undertold. And so the opportunity came and I jumped at it.
So, in telling his story, there's so much of hip hop history that is intertwined with his early beginnings. So, when you were laying out how you wanted to share his story, how much of that story did you want to bring in, or did you kind of let the story develop as you were moving forward with the project?
I mean, every step that he took was somehow connected to the evolution of hip hop. I mean, even down to sample clearances and the issues with sampling. I mean, he was at the forefront of that, and that further shaped hip hop, the hip hop that we know today. I mean, there's just so many moments in his life. I mean, the fact that both Big Daddy Kane and Rakim were people who he personally pushed and inspired and told them they could do it, and they both tell you, yeah, if it wasn't for this guy, I don't know where I would be. I mean, that's just two of the most important voices in the culture. Like Biz Markie, very humbly, as a friend, going back to that word that comes out so much with Biz, as a friend, he encouraged them. And that's just, especially in the world we live in today, like encouragement from a friend is not a bad thing. People learning that there are people like that out there in the world is not a bad thing.
So, Tara, for you, Biz had an extensive memorabilia collection that involved hip hop and childhood items and all of this sort of fusion of things in the past. What was it like looking over these items and picking sort of what to bring forward, maybe to Sacha's attention that he didn't know as this piece was being put together, and the elements to highlight from that aspect?
Well, I trusted Sacha 100%. Sacha literally came into my home and set up shop for days and days. I actually missed them when they left. So he kind of got a chance to see a lot of the things that we had, from Barbie dolls. To this day, nobody can understand why Biz was collecting all these, Barbie dolls, to matchboxes, to jewelry, I mean, the list just goes on and on. Sneakers, just all kinds of things, jerseys, you name it. Yeah, I just let Sacha just run with what he wanted to bring forward that he thought was important to the film, which in turn turned out to be everything, right, Sacha?
Well, to add to that is collecting is everything now with these kids. Like they collect sneakers, all the things that Biz was into 30 years ago. Now is like the thing where people, like, sneakers are like the stock market online. Like people trade in sneakers. I mean, Biz knew that early on. So he just, in so many different ways, he intersects with culture and intersects with movements and people. It's just fascinating. I didn't know until I really dove in how involved and how inspirational he was to so many people. I had no idea.
Jill, can I just also add to that? The other thing about the things that Biz collected clearly were the things that he probably couldn't afford as a child. So that's probably the story about the toys and the dolls. It was everything he couldn't obtain, growing up the way that he did. So I'm sure once he started to make money, and buy the things that he really, really, really wanted, it definitely were things of an 8 or a 12-year-old boy.
So, in sort of looking over these objects, Sacha, and matching them to his story of development and his rise up, what were some things that surprised you, even as the director of this, creating this, putting it together, about his life and his connection to hip hop?
Well, I didn't know about him being homeless and living under a bridge. I mean, that was, heartbreaking. But also the fact that he connected with all these artists in their lunchrooms And everyone thought that he went to their school, but he didn't. How the hell? I mean, there's no way someone now in 2023 would be able to get into a lunchroom, start rapping and make friends and go from high school to high school and do that. It just would never happen now. So he knew the sort, like he was like a bear in Alaska who knows where the salmon is. It's like he was that bear who just knew where to go to get that hip hop salmon, and he was the best at it. He was a talent scout. He was an artist. He was so many things.
Marketer,
Marketer,
with the Biz Markie hat. He was, early on with marketing, so many
yeah.
things.
So in knowing that and in learning his story, there's so many people that he contributed to the early starts of his career, like you mentioned, encouraged them, or were just a part of the ride through tour, or just, fellowship at that time period. How did you decide who you would include as contributors for the documentary? Because I'm sure there was a lot of people that wanted to be included, or a lot of stories that could have been included. So how did you make that decision?
I mean, there's so many people, and I have a tendency to interview way too many people. And this time I wanted to be very focused in the story I tell. So I think the people we chose were, I mean, were fantastic. There are people who later after the fact chimed up and said they wanted to be in it. We couldn't find them, can't get everybody in it. But I think the people that we chose definitely had interesting connections to him. And like a guy like Prince Paul, who's a good friend of mine, I knew he knew Biz, but I didn't know how far back. I mean, he went further back than anybody. And Prince Paul, very important producer, De La Soul's early stuff. I mean, I heard a De La Soul song in the new Ninja Turtles film. I mean, these are inspirational, influential artists that Biz Markie personally knew and touched, who were not just rappers, but producers, fine artists, you name it. It's just unbelievable. He's literally the Forrest Gump of the culture. He's touched everybody.
I agree.
So creatively, as you were putting it together, you took some choices in it that were interesting, that sort of lends themselves to how creative Biz was, as far as you mentioned marketing and just what he would do with his songs, utilizing the puppets and animation. So what made you want to include that and sort of those scenes that you dropped in that utilize, for example, Tar with Biz in the hospital, or, conversations?
Well, I mean, I met with Biz when he was alive, and we talked about doing the doc. And of course, there's a story of the Biz puppet from the Master Ace song that we talked about. But because he's making, he didn't make the Biz video, the Biz video, but people associate Biz with that puppet. But also because he collected toys, because he was this big kid, to me it really made sense. And to Tara's credit, like, I just kind of asked her to do it, and I had no idea if she would do it or be great or want to do it. And she did it. She was great, and she wanted to do it. And I think because this is her best friend, she would know better than me. I'm only guessing that I thought that was cool, or that's something Biz would want. I thought it was interesting, but she did it. And to me, it felt like, wow, I must be onto something. I must be tapping into something greater, because she did it. And it's just, for a lot of people, it might be a little strange or different, but I think because of their relationship, it just made so much sense.
And so, Tara, how did you feel when he brought it to you?
Remember that day, Sacha? I came to set, and Sacha and Andre kind of met me at the door of the set, like, hey, you're here. Hey, what's going on? I'm like, what's going on, guys? They're like, come on downstairs. We want you to read something. And they gave me like a 10-page script. And as I was reading the script, I was literally in tears. And I looked up at them and I said, you guys really want me to do this? And Sacha was like, Tara, I think you can do it. So he was like, I'm going to give you a day, and you're going to come back to set and we're going to do it. And like I said before, I absolutely trusted Sacha's creativity. I've seen a lot of his work before, and I've seen how he predicted hard things, like when he did the thing with Rick James and what happened to him as a boy, and he animated that. That was hard. So when Sacha asked me, to act, with this puppet, that you can only imagine how hard that was for me to see my husband literally wither away, in the hospital. So it was hard. So because he was puppeted, I was able to do it. It really ended up being cathartic. At the end of those days, remember, Sacha, I almost like collapsed because I did it. It was hard, but that story had to be told. We're very private people, and we had those conversations, but Sacha literally held my hand throughout this whole process and just kept telling me how important this story was and is, and how it'll be. And I believed him, and he was absolutely correct. And I'm so happy that I did do that, as opposed to being too scared to do it.
So Tara, for you, when you are going through a process like this and reflecting back over, moments in your relationship, moments in his life, what were moments that maybe you had forgotten about that sort of brought a smile to your face as far as your relationship? And what is also something that you maybe learned about him that you weren't quite aware of or didn't know as in depth until this story was told?
Well, Biz compartmentalized his life. He compartmentalized everything. Although he was everywhere and everyone knew him, he made everybody feel like they were his best friend. They were the most important people in his life. I was his wife. I mean, thank God I was his only wife. But, my God, this person chose me to be his partner. So, looking back at a lot of things, like when we got married, it wasn't a big deal. It was just personal to us. We would never have a big party. His whole life was a big party. Our marriage was just a celebration of us. So when I kept looking at that, on the big screen of that day that we got married, I don't even know if it's in the film, but after we said our vows, Biz looked at me and said, "Thank you." It's just those things are heart wrenching, but it feels good. This person was a good man and we were good to each other. So, looking back at those things, every time I look at the film, it kind of, gets to me. He was a wonderful human being. He really was.
Amazing. So, Sacha, for you, obviously, in the process of putting together something creatively, when you come to the editing portion, there are some things that you're going to have to lose because, as with a story as rich as this, there's a lot to fit in there. So, what is something that you had to leave out that you really wish you would have had time to be able to include in the story?
Off the top of my head, there isn't too much I missed because I think the film achieves a few things. One, you learn about this loving relationship between Biz and his wife. You learn about his struggles, but you also learn about, again, sampling, beatboxing, the Juice Crew, Cold Chillin' Records, like all these things that you don't really know a lot about, but sort of you get a sampling. It's like a little sample plate of all these things that at the end makes a really big plate of food. And it's like you learn so much about the film is about Biz, but because he's the essence of hip hop, it's about hip hop. It's the most hip hop film I've ever made. When you really look at it, it's just how something so big can come from someone so everyday, but not. You think he's everyday and simple, but he shows you how we're all special in our own way. And if we apply ourselves, as corny as it sounds, we really can make something of ourselves. And what no one expected anything from Biz, nobody. He didn't expect anything. But once he understood hip hop and the power of it, and he embraced it, it changed his life. I mean, hip hop changed my life. I mean, I got to go to graduate school at the Graduate School of Journalism at Columbia University on my strength of my knowledge of graffiti. You would have told me I would have got paid to go to Columbia graduate journalism school, I wouldn't believe you. But these are all things that hip hop have done for people like myself and for Biz and everyone else.